Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen are the pairs that will be analyzed today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video because I do have a bonus pair in store. But yeah, guys, we'll go for my trade for the week first on NZD USD, then progress to the analysis shortly after. So feel free to skip ahead and use the timestamps below if you want to go to a particular pair. But NZD USD, again, same as last week. NZD USD had a trade last week, was a loss again this week, back-to-back losses on NZD USD. Not ideal, but part of trading. You're going to have losing streaks, winning streaks, back-to-back losses, back-to-back wins. As long as you manage your risk, got decent risk to rewards, you should be coming out top in the long run. But yeah, unfortunately, a loss on NZD USD. Looks like I just got faked out on this one. Price came into my area of interest there, got short, but we had a FOMC, price pushed to the upside. We had a lot of dollar weakness at the time, then dollar gained some strength, and then price came crashing back down for pretty much all the dollar pairs, Euro USD, Pound USD, AUD USD, all drop into the downside. And yeah, it looks like I just got faked out, didn't get an opportunity to get back in on a re-entry either, so yeah, unfortunately just a loss down ends the USD, but next week is looking promising, so let's go take a look at Euro USD up first as always. So Euro, big crash to the downside as well, pretty bullish before a big move to the downside. We were looking for a bit more downside coming to the week. I was talking about this area up here. Obviously we never got the retest. In hindsight, I was looking for a quick retest and a continuation lower, then looking at some buys further down into this area, which had a slight fake of during that was that Thursday. Yeah, Thursday had a slight break, but the market is now trading back above it. So with this analysis, with this price action with Euro USD, I'm still looking at a little bit more downside based on how price is moving, but I do think we can have a little bit more room for a pullback to the upside before a sell-off. This is looking like our new highs at 1.125. We do have this trend line here as well, which is currently rejecting price. As you can see, 1, 2, potentially 3 there as well. So I do think there is a little bit more upside left to Euro, but I am looking at lower high performing and another push back down again. So I'm keeping my eye on this area here, this nice consolidation coming back for another retest around 1.11048. So I'm looking at some shorts slightly higher up, basically retracing that big impulse and then looking for the next move to the downside. Now target wise, I would be a little bit conservative because the higher time frames for me are still very bullish on the daily and the weekly time frames, as we can still seeing higher highs and higher lows. So I don't want to be looking to short the market for too long, and definitely taking my profit at appropriate areas such as this big old level here as well. So if you see a nice retracement, looking at some nice sells from around 1.11 back down into that level, then potentially if we get a break of that, then we can see a lot more downside for Euro, potentially a reversal. But for me, no major structure has been invalidated yet for Euro. This is still the major swing low, which gave us these new highs. So as long as price is still above that, I'm still bullish on Euro, but I can still take advantage of some counter trend setups. We do have a bit of a bearish trend here, so some shorts do look good. But like I said, I wouldn't be too overly confident with the TPs and the targets, just in case price does start to rally back against us. So looking at a push back down into at least 1.11. If you do break that, then potentially you can go further to these lows, but again, want to be a bit more conservative than aggressive in this situation. So looking at some shorts for Euro, keep an eye on some pullbacks. There probably could be some longs there if we don't break through and start rejecting, so keep an eye out for the longs as well. But I'm looking for a little bit more upside back into 1.11, hopefully take advantage of some bit more dollar strength, and yeah, see if we can get some downside back into 1.1. Okay, so on to dollar yen, USD JPY had some crazy moves this week for both dollar and both yen. As you can see, USD JPY price action is a little bit all over the place, but the bias and the analysis still remains intact from last week. In fact, the past couple of weeks or so, we're still looking at a bigger move to the upside for dollar yen back up to 144, 145. Yeah, around 145. So we're still looking at a bigger push into those highs. If we look at the structure from a daily perspective, still got low down there, high, low, high, and now we're looking at a new low potentially and for the continuation back up into the prior high, and maybe eventually the highs up there on the left. But for me, this down move here is just the market coming back, respecting some support, big wicks to the downside, nice shift in momentum. I'm looking at more upside here for dollar yen, but I'm not really seeing a clear cut buy opportunity. The price action is a little bit messy. So if we can start clearing out the highs and start looking for some break and retest above 142, I think we'll probably get some much clearer price action and a lot clearer opportunities, because in this area, it's difficult to see what price is doing. We do have some lower highs in the lower time frames, but then again, we've got this humongous impulse down, impulse up. So I wouldn't want to be looking to sell dollar yen, including with the daily price action as well. So definitely still very, very bullish. But unless we're going to see another revisit of this area, and that probably just gives a consolidation anyway. So yeah, 142 would be a nice pivotal area to clear. Then we can start looking for some break and retest, and pretty clear cut target back at 144.500, 145. Generally speaking, back at the highs here on the left. So yeah, dollar yen still very bullish. We'll wait to see if we can clear 142, but looking at price coming back to those highs around 145 for next week. Okay, so now on to dollar CAD. USD CAD is looking bullish. We were looking for a bigger move to the upside this week and kind of just got consolidation, but I think the big move we're looking for is starting to really progress and develop for a nice opportunity next week. Because again, we're still talking about this weekly time frame here. Again, if I whip out the old trend line, connecting these major lows, 1, 2, 3, and potentially 4, you can see we're still firing wicks into this area here. Strong trend line, strong resistance on the left. We've got a lot of confluence here, and the market keeps rejecting this area, keeps trying to penetrate through. Again, this week as well, this is the weekly candle, nice wick to the downside, market trying to break through, but it pulls back up. You can see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 aggressive wicks all into this area. This is a clear sign that the market is struggling to break through, and most likely, not definitely, most likely, we'll head to the upside. So taking that information from the weekly, dropping to the 4H and taking that information into the 4H, you can see we're starting to build up with these high lows, 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 there as well. And we've got this big old resistance that if we can break through, I do think the floodgates will open. We'll probably see dollar CAD start really pushing to the upside. It looks like we are starting to clear outside of that consolidation now. So probably buys early next week do look good, and potentially could be seeing a push all the way back to those price swing highs at around 133, 1.33800. So for me next week, just looking for buy opportunities. If you can see that momentum continue a little bit further, look for some pullbacks on the retest, then continuations back up into 1.338 look very, very good. This is what I'm looking at. Nice little break and retest, and then continuations into that level. Again, don't necessarily need to target all the way up there. There's some resistance here on the left you can target to, kind of like a nice midpoint, so you can maybe take partials or just target that level outright. But in terms of the price action, how price is developing here, we're seeing continuation. We're seeing successive high lows here. Now looks like price is likely to break, so you get a nice little retest on 1.323, then looking at some buys into 1.338 next week. Okay, so over to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound, I was expecting price to continue a little bit higher this week. We had a really nice area of confluence up here with the trend line connecting these lower highs. We've got this big old level of support here, as you can see. So I was looking for us to come up, reject that area, and then head to the downside. But yeah, Euro Pound didn't do that. We broke back underneath this level of resistance here, which was support, but prior resistance, we broke underneath that level. I was looking for us to hold it, continue higher into that 0.872 area, then see the lower high to drop to the downside. But it looks like we are forming the lower high already, and the market's well on its way to continue to the downside. So now that we're just back inside this range, expecting price to push back into the lows here. If you are looking for a setup, I would say look at some retracement back into this area here for a lower high, then some sells. That looks like a nice place to look to go short, pretty safe place for a stop loss as well. And risk to reward, if you're going to target the lows, looks pretty attractive as well. Not really my forte. The price action is a little bit sideways. I think if Euro Pound can start breaking through the lows again, then I will start become a little bit more interested in Euro Pound. But there are a lot better pairs out there which have a bit more trending conditions and some cleaner structure to trade. This for me is still within that kind of consolidation, so still treating it as one. But yeah, if we can see a nice push into the level there, Probably get a nice little lower high and the continuations down. At the moment, looks like price is consolidating within the consolidation, so I would stay away from this area here. It's just very, very indecisive, difficult to get a good quality trade opportunity, even on the lower time frames, in my opinion. But if you can come into some nice area of confluence, nice resistance, the top of the range, you know, probably get a better opportunity to short, and obviously risk reward looks very, very good there as well. So now that we're looking like we're breaking back inside the consolidation, this is looking like a low high. I would say I'm leaning towards the bearish side of things again with euro pound, and looking for a push back to these lows here at 0.852 next week. Okay, so for AUSD, big move to the downside this week, and this is the move we were favoring. It kind of didn't play out as I was expected to, but essentially we held onto the resistance here. So again, as you can see, big old level here on the daily chart, 0.68, resistance 1, 2, 3, fake out number 1 over here, fake out number 2. So I'm looking at a big double top, essentially, kind of giving us the next major lower high. So if I zoom out, you know, these are all our successive lower highs. 1, 2, 3, kind of a big fake of that high, but 4, 5, 6, equal highs there, 7. I'm looking at potentially we've got 8 over here with that double top, and I'm expecting price to eventually come back to those lows eventually. So now that we've had that big fake out and price come back inside 0.68, this week we've got a nice little retest of the level, and the market's looking bearish again. So expecting price to push back into the lows here, which is this support level here around 0.65750, we'll call it, and then eventually these lows here as well. So looking for more downside for AUSD. Again, some pullbacks onto this level look pretty attractive. So nice little pullback after that impulse, retest some structure there. You can see we're starting to place these lower highs on the 4H. 1 over there, second over there, third over there, potentially fourth, nice little pullback. And then again, looking for your continuation to the downside into that daily level of support. Again, you can target this support here as well. It does make sense as well, but I'll expect it to at least hit that support now. Now it looks like we've formed that next lower high. So yeah, AUSD for me, clear price action, clear lower highs, nice impulse to the downside. Let's look for that next pullback around 0.671, then continuations down to around 0.66, 0.658 for next week. Okay, so onto NZD CAD. So buy still remains the same, still looking at push back down into these lows. Had a nice little pullback this week, almost into the head and shoulder level, which was this level here. I was looking for price to come a little bit higher. I had 2 areas of interest this week for NZD CAD. This one over here, which didn't hold, and the second one just above it over there. And as you can see, we are looking very, very bearish now for NZD CAD. So for me, NZD CAD is now just placing these lower highs, as we can see, 1 over there, 2, 3. I think NZD CAD is just slowly working its way back down to these lows. If I zoom out to the daily time frame, you can see we have successive lower highs here, all kind of tucked away nicely with this trend line. I'm just expecting this trend to continue back into these lows here, and potentially these lows at longer term, but of course, we don't really need to be thinking about that right now. So NZD CAD for me, looking at a little bit more of a pullback, and then some shorts to the downside. Got a lovely support level over here, as you can see. So probably get some nice confluence around 0.82. And then from there, looking for my setups, nice rejection, wicks, shift in momentum, and target those lows. Or you can target these lows. Say if we do pull back from here, you can probably just target these lows here, maybe get a 1 to 2, 1 to 3. That's beautiful stuff. But if you can come a little bit further into 0.80400, could be looking at 1 to 4, 5, 6 potentially. So it's up to you how you want to play it, how aggressive. But in terms of the opportunity, definitely looking at shorts, definitely looking for some sales around 0.82. This probably will make the watch list for next week. Make sure you check out the Telegram link in the description if you do want to see my watch list for the week ahead. But yeah, looking for some shorts around 0.82 back to 0.80400 next week. Okay, so pound NZD, very, very messy price action, very, very messy price action. As you can see, big old level of resistance up here, which we've just come into, big level of support down here, which the market keeps rejecting. Again, if we do zoom out, look at the high time frames, and again, that's the advantage of looking at the high time frames. It can sometimes tell you where price is going longer term, what the bigger trend is. So when you are looking at price action like this, again, doesn't have to be in the 4H, could be in the hourly, 15-minute chart, whichever chart you normally trade. Sometimes just getting to the bigger time frame tells you, okay, price is actually very, very bullish. and we're likely to break to the upside rather than break down. Again, doesn't mean you need to do anything, but it just means that if we do break to the upside, a break and retest is of higher probability, because not only have we cleared the consolidation on the time frame you're trading, but we're also in favor of the higher time frames as well. So that gives it that extra probability, and in the longer run, that's going to pay dividends. So yeah, with pound NZD's consolidation, for me, I don't see any kind of real quality setup in this area unless we do break above 2.09 or potentially break through the lows at 2.05. Like I said, we can see the higher time frames bullish. I do favor a break to the upside. It does look like the market's starting to play some higher lows in the consolidation, although I wouldn't really read too much into it because it's still consolidation, but it is giving us some green flags that, okay, upside breakout is likely. So looking at something like this, pull back onto the level, maybe you can get another higher low continuation of the trend line there potentially, so that could give us some extra confluence on the breakout. But yeah, looking at some more upside here going forward. As for targets, we're kind of trading in some really high prices right now, really big levels. As you can see, this was like the big COVID wick, so potentially longer term we could be going up there. But shorter term, it's a little bit more difficult to decide. We've got some big old levels here on the daily chart, around 2.0903. I think we may be trading at that price. Yeah, not too far away. And above that, there's not really much to work with apart from that big spike. So I think for pound NZD going forward, maybe stay aware of 2.09, 600, 700 as that daily level. But probably just utilizing the psychological levels. You got 2.1 just above it, that's a nice little target. 2.105, you got 2.11 above that. So I'll probably should utilize the psychological levels as targets, because as we saw to the left, there's not really much to go with. So you're gonna have to stay with the psychological levels at best, or maybe use something else like fib extension or something like that. But yeah, definitely looking at some breakouts to the upside for pound NZD, retest the 2.089, and expecting some more upside once we see it. Okay, so next up we got CAD Yen. So CAD Yen, similar to dollar yen, big crash to the downside followed by a big recovery back up again. Again, it looks like prices just come back to key areas of support, rejected it quite heavily, and I'm expecting price to continue high. It looks like a big double bottom. Again, we've had a very, very big impulsive move to the upside. For me, this looks like the correction of this big impulse. So now I'm expecting, let me just move that out of the way. So now I'm expecting impulse, correction, next impulse to the upside. Again, if you look at the longer term things, everything is still pretty bullish. Again, higher time frame trajectory is still very much to the upside. So I think we're gonna have another test of this resistance and see what we do there. We may not break through it, but in terms of the next move for CAD Yen, it's looking pretty likely it's to the upside, at least back to 109. And then we'll see what we do up there. We may come back down again, or we may break through. But yeah, after that rejection there, it's looking like a very textbook double bottom, and I'm expecting price to continue higher. So targets still remain back at 109,500, back to the highs. Again, with dollar yen, I'm not really seeing like a clear opportunity here. So same as dollar yen, I'm kind of looking for price to break through the high and then start looking for some opportunities above that. Feel free to dig into the lower time frames and see if you can look for some pullback somewhere, but price action is quite choppy. We got some lower highs that we want to buy into. If I drop to the hourly, you can see we've got these lower highs here, which again, as someone who's looking to buy, I don't want to try and buy into that just in case we do form a lower high and come back down again and maybe consolidate further. So buys do look good, but as in for the 4H and the hourly time frame, doesn't look quite good yet. So maybe this could be a trade later in the week, but definitely a good trade if you can get some good buy setup. So looking for some buys for CAD Yen, looking for a breaking retest of 107,790 and continuation back to the highs at 109,500 next week. Okay, so up next we've got pound USD. So pound USD, my analysis with this one is pretty similar with euro, and again, they're very correlated pairs. So it makes sense, but again, in terms of the price action, we're seeing successive higher highs and higher lows. Again, no major low has been invalidated. This is still the previous swing that gave us these highs. The market's still intact. It needs to break through these lows for me to actually say, okay, we're no longer bullish, we're bearish. but we can still take advantage of some counter trend setups and some sells, definitely when we've seen some nice bearish moves like this. But in terms of the higher time frames, if I go to the daily real quick, you can see overall the market's still up. So if I do get into any shorts for pound or euro, USD, again, trying to be conservative with the targets and not trying to be too aggressive. But what I'm looking at going into next week, I'm looking at some nice counter trend plays, looking at some sells coming back into this resistance level here. Again, nice resistance there, kind of had a big fake out of it, and then we had that big news come in, and then looking for price to come back and retest it and then get the continuation to the downside. I was expecting pound USD to continue higher, but again, if you do draw in this trend line, we had some good confluence here. We did see a nice move to the upside, but the fact that we just formed a lower high and aggressively dropped to the downside again, that's not a good characteristic of a market that's trying to go higher, or at least trying to go higher at the moment. It needs to develop and give me some higher highs and higher lows for me to be back on that kind of bullish train again for pound. So what I'm looking at is some nice counter trend sells, again targets. If I do get a nice opportunity up there, probably just keep it simple, back down to price support, and be done with the trade. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for pound USD. So keep an eye on a retest of 1.29496, 1.29500 we'll call it. And we've got some nice targets around 1.27700. Yeah, 1.27700. So yeah, some nice counter trend setups for pound next week. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD had a bullish bias coming into the week, gave out a couple of areas for some longs. This was one of them, which price kind of faked, as you can see, before having a nice move to the upside. But I'm looking at price coming a little bit lower now, based on the price action and based on the fact that we failed to continue higher. Again, similar to pound CAD, it looks like we are forming a lower high there. But again, same thing with pound USD as well. The market is still creating these higher highs and higher lows. No major structure has been invalidated yet. So I'm looking at price coming back into this prior daily high over here. If I take it across, big old level of resistance there on the left, which will be turned support, and again continuing these higher lows as well, 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 there as well. So you've got some good confidence for pound CAD around the 1.68500 mark. So what I'm looking at next week is another move to the downside, which looks likely as well, and then we see what we get here. If we get some nice wicks, some nice rejection, I do think we can get a nice pop to the upside. Now I'm not really looking for a home run, for a major higher low to form here and price pushes all the way back to the highs, back to 1.73. Fantastic if it happens. It's a possibility, of course, but we're getting aggressive selling pressure here to the downside, which is not the best sign in this bullish trend. The fact that we're seeing these big pullbacks and a lot of bearish momentum in them is a sign that the market is tiring. So if I do get some buys here, again, I'll probably just keep it simple, back to some resistance here if you form a lower high there, or potentially here as well. Probably get a nice 1 to 2.5, 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4 if we're lucky into those areas, which again is a fantastic trade in itself. So for pound CAD, looking at some buys here, got a high probability of a higher low forming. Of course, we need to wait for the signals first, don't just jump straight in. Again, when I do draw these risk to reward tools and these trade opportunities, I'm putting in areas where I'm looking for entries, but it's not that I'm having an order set there. There's a big difference. So I'll be waiting for some confirmations and then looking for some longs and targets around this area, potentially that high up there. So yeah, pound CAD bullish bias. Let's see if we can hold 1.685 for some longs next week. Okay, so on to pound yen. So pound yen, another yen pair with a big crash to the downside followed by a big recovery. Again, this type of price action, this V-shaped price action, more often than not, most of the time normally resembles a fake out. So if you see aggressive move to the downside or to the upside, followed by an equally as aggressive move in the opposite direction. So in this case, an aggressive move down followed by an equally aggressive move back up again. Normally these are fake moves. And again, you can look at the price action, the way the market's moving here, and you kind of compare it to all of this price action here. There's a big difference. It looks out of place, and that's normally how fake outs look. They look out of place, especially ones that are obvious like this. Not all fake outs would be as obvious, but when you see big exaggerated wicks or just a big closure above a big level and the market comes straight back down again aggressively, those are good things to look out for fake outs. So I'm actually expecting this to be our next high low for pound yen. and price to slowly make its way back to the highs here at, what is it, 184-ish? Yeah, just underneath 184. So that is what I'm expecting longer term for pound yen. Now, I'm not really seeing a concrete area to look to go long from, because price right now is coming back into some resistance, and we got some structure here, which is what creates some lower highs, which may give pound yen some slight downside. So I'm not really looking at getting long just yet. What I am looking for, which may be a bit of a reach, but if pound yen can push to the upside, take out these highs, so actually break structure, then look for the pullbacks after that. Now that will be a nice little trade to take, because at that point we've actually got some bullish structure again. Now we can look for a pullback, retest some structure, maybe this level here, maybe we come a little bit deeper down here. We do have a bit of a trend line, which I was talking about last week, as you can see with this low here, higher low, potentially high low there as well. So of course this would be the big fake out. Then potentially from here we can hold this level and then look for some buying opportunities. So again, I need that high to be taken out first for it to be valid, which is why it's a bit of a reach, because if we do take out that high, we may just keep going up, especially if the market's already faked a lot of people out. It might just keep going. But of course, you know, that's what trading is. You're waiting for your opportunity, you're waiting for your turn to get involved. If it is your turn, you know, don't take the trade, which is obviously sometimes difficult to do, but when you have clarity in what you're trading, it becomes a lot easier. So this is kind of what I'm looking for pound yen. So breaking retest of 181.877 or 181, yeah, basically 181. But the condition is I do want that high to be taken out first. You can still probably look to take the trade, but for me, the probability isn't quite there yet. So I'll be patient enough to wait for those highs to break. But yeah, looking at some buys for pound yen next week, back into 184. Okay, so over to gold this week. So gold, big move to the downside. I was actually looking for gold to coming back and retest this level for some longs. Obviously that never happened. Gold was looking quite bullish at one point, then we started firing some aggressive wicks to the upside, then we had a big sell-off. So gold's going to be being a little bit all over the place, but going into next week, I'm no longer trying to be aggressive with the longs. Don't get me wrong, I'm still very bullish on gold. If I drop to the higher time frames, or scale to the higher time frames, I should say, you can see that the trajectory of the market is still very much up. You know, we're still seeing these successive higher lows, as we can see. So longer term, I'm still looking for gold to do something like this. However, with the price action printed going into the end of the week and going to next week, you know, we don't really want to be looking to buy this unless gold just goes and breaks through the highs here. Then yeah, the buys are back on again. We're looking for some pullbacks and some continuations to the upside. But going into next week, I'm looking at some nice counter trend plays. So similar to Euro and Pound USD, looking at some counter trend plays to the downside, coming back into some nice areas of structure up here. Then possibly what we could see for gold is, excuse me, what we could see for gold is a push into this area, which is around 1970, a sell off from there back into this area, which is kind of like our big head and shoulder level. So if I highlight it out, left shoulder there, head over here, there's our neckline, potential right shoulder into 1934, which was the same support over here, so taken across. Then potentially from there we can get the big head and shoulder, which again will inverse head and shoulder I should say, which will line up with that higher time frame daily trend line, which I drew on the daily as well. So that could be a very nice high confidence opportunity for some longs. And again, there's our neckline. So if that goes, then we've got a pretty good probability that gold is going to keep moving north, and we've got some highs around 2050 we can target. So again, that's a lot to take in that I just said there, and very, very theoretical. You know, price could just break through and go to the upside and just invalidate everything I said by Monday next week. But in terms of the counter trend plays, they look good. So I'm looking at another lower high forming around 1970. They're going to push these lows, and then again we'll take it one step at a time. If you do get this move here, that's nice, of course, and then we start looking for some buys down here. Or if you want to, like I said, you can wait for the neckline to go and then look for your buys after. But that's kind of looking how I want to play gold going into next week and maybe next couple of weeks as well. Okay, so up next we've got Bitcoin. So Bitcoin really hasn't done much since the breakout. We had the breakout this week sometime. When was it? Monday. Oh, it's quite early on actually. So we had a breakout on Monday. Again, I've been talking about Bitcoin in this range for quite a while, saying nothing's really looking good. We're still stuck in major resistance. We need price either to break through it to the upside or break below it. Then we can find some nice opportunities, and we have done that. So I am expecting some downside for Bitcoin, and the first major target is this high here. So as you can see, this is the high which gave us our last down move before Bitcoin ripped through to the upside, and again, no retest either. So 28,500 looks like a likely place for a retest. We could go a lot lower as well, but that's kind of like the first obstacle in Bitcoin's way to the downside. So I'm looking at some sells for Bitcoin, and again, you've got a lovely level here, big support. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wicks into this area. Really nice area of confluence. Potentially could see another stab to the upside, maybe take out this high as well, and then potentially get the collapse to the downside. You can see Bitcoin does love giving those big exaggerated wicks before a big sell-off or before a big buy, as you can see. But in terms of the price action, we're seeing successive lower highs and lower lows. So looking at the next one before a drop to the downside. So that's kind of what I'm looking at going forward for Bitcoin. And then potentially, if price action looks good, 28,500 might give Bitcoin some nice buys to the upside again. How far? I'll just play it with structure on the left, but we'll speak about that once that is developing. But at the moment, the sales are looking good for Bitcoin around 29,690. So keep an eye on some shorts for Bitcoin going into next week. And last but not least, we've got our bonus pair, which is Euro Swiss going into next week. Now, I really like the price action of Euro Swiss. It's still trending to the downside in the higher time frames. Again, longer term, still looking for Euro Swiss to come back down to these lows. A lot of Swiss pairs, I'm still expecting a lot more downside. And we've got a nice little weekly support level around here, which is again our next kind of major target. So obviously longer term, we're looking for new lows past this point at 0.94, but of course the support level, which starts at the bodies, starts around 0.95. So that's the next major target for Euro Swiss. And again, as long as we maintain those lower lows and lower highs, that is where I'm expecting price to eventually end up. You can see on the daily chart, successive lower highs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, breaking through some key structure there as well. So I am looking at some more downside. If we drop to the 4H, again, still successive lower highs, 2, 3, 4. I'm looking at another one coming back to retest this support level here. And of course, we've got some nice trend line confluence connecting those lower highs into 0.96100, we'll call it. So yeah, looking for some shorts around there. And again, for targets, probably keep it nice and simple back down to the prior lows. 0.95 is just underneath it. So for me, there's no kind of point to target 0.95 because there's the possibility that price could obviously respect support and come back to entry. So again, you have to have your trader's cap on, not necessarily your analysis cap. 0.95 is likely, but as a trader, why would you try and risk to gain an extra few pips and see the market potentially go against you? Take your profit, at sensible places would be my tip. But of course, manage your trade how you want to. So yeah, this one I'm looking at Euro Swiss, nice confidence around there, looking for the next lower high and targets back down to the lows at 0.95200, but eventually expecting 0.95 and 0.94. But that is definitely the setup I'm looking at going forward, which will definitely be on the watch list for next week. But yeah, guys, we have made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you did, again, let me know if you get to the end. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Good luck next week on your trading. Again, make sure you're having a trading plan, appropriate risk management, keeping your mind fixed as well, which is the most important thing as well. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't done already, hit the bell so you don't miss on any uploads in the future. But take care, and I'll see you all next week.